All right, welcome everyone to the Illuminated Mind podcast with me, Matthew Brownstein, and my guest today, Dr. Susan Nicholas. So Susan, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Matthew. Pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Susan is a former physician and surgeon, yet she had a major conscious awakening in 2012 that I'd be curious to talk to you about, and that transitioned you from the medical field into what you call soul healing work. So you're now a telepathic, medical, intuitive, and energy healer. Definitely want to dive into that. A three-time author and international speaker. We see you in all these TED Talks, looking great. Your signature talk is the frequency of money. So I know you want to dive into that theme today. And then, three books, one adult and two children's books. And when you're not doing this kind of stuff, you are on your Be Conscious podcast, where I get to know you, where I was a guest last time. So now my chance to interview you. So why don't we just start? Yeah, why don't we start with tell us about you? Who is Susan Nicholas? What's the overview?
Sure. So again, my name is Susan Nicholas, and I was a young person who I would say began my life on this external journey of validation. I was born into an impoverished circumstance from a teenage mother, and we lived in, on the public welfare system and in housing projects in a very rural community in Pennsylvania. At 17, I was my mother's second child. And what was really significant about my mom was that she was the daughter of a prostitute. And my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, also ran her own brothel. And so this was if you can imagine, this was the environment that I came into the world in. This is what the life looked like for me. And I think from a very young age, Matthew, knew that isn't the life that I wanted for myself. I also knew that I could learn pretty well, even from a very young age. And I believed that I could educate myself out of poverty. Now, the language behind that came a little bit later, but I thought if I went to school and I studied really hard, I would not have to live my life in poverty. And so I went about doing that. I think as a young child, some people would have said I was an old soul. I don't know. I was quickly to give up childish things, and I was a serious kind of student. And so I went about learning. A really, I would say, pivotal thing occurred for me when I was 6 years old. My father remarried my stepmother and moved us out of that housing project, which he had grown up in, and his mother, it was like a generational pattern and cycle playing out, and moved us across the border to West Virginia to a very low income community, but we were not on the public welfare system. And that is where I began first grade. And so there was a lot of turbulence in my early years of life, a lot of, I would say, insecurity at the very core of me. And I think what I didn't recognize early on was that the energy of poverty, that what I call the prostitution energy, there's the shame around money. Despite, the education that I received, the distance that I moved away, the money that I earned, I still carried that energy within me. And it led me to a point where I was what I would call the height of my worldly successes. I was doing my clinical fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery at Stanford Hospital in Palo Alto, California. And I would say was at the top of my career and the bottom of my soulful, I was woefully, soulfully bankrupt. And I couldn't, there was this huge juxtaposition of what I was feeling inside and what things were looking like on paper and all the possibilities and opportunities set before me. I was even very confused how I felt, and I didn't know how to feel better. I didn't know how to remedy this hollowness in my soul. And it got to be so painful that that I believed the only way to be free was to die off the planet.
Hmm.
And so it was at that time in my career, in my life, that I attempted to take my own life.
Hmm.
And so surviving that suicide attempt, I was 36 years old. I was, well trained and accomplished, and I was on the other coast. I'd moved as far across the country as I could before hitting the Pacific Ocean. I still carried with me these feelings and these energies, something I did not have language around.
Hmm.
And I believe during that time, I heard my inner self speak to me for the very first time. Or let me say, at least I acknowledged that inner voice for the very first time.
Mhm.
And I would say I always knew that I was intuitive. I would use my intuition when it was benefited me when I was seeing patients, and I could have a sense when patients were going to die or not. And I always could, would show up right in the nick of time before someone coded, or I would have those types of intuitive kind of experiences. But it was only relative to things that I studied or knew. I didn't honor that intuition in the realm of spirituality. I didn't have language around spirituality. I was very left-brained, very goal-oriented, very tasked, very evidence-based, very, analytical, very quantitative. And so for me to come into a spiritual space, I wouldn't have believed it if you told me. I just wouldn't believe that this would be part of my life. But I think what I learned from that and your death experience was that I was actually here to do more than even being a heart surgeon. Who thought that there could be more than that? I didn't believe it. And what that would look like, I knew less about. But I knew that to survive and to go on living in this life, something had to change dramatically. And because I still held the energy of poverty within me, I was too fearful to make a spiritual shift or do whatever you wanted to call it, spiritual study or work. And so I went to business school and I thought, oh, let me get a business degree and this will give me that coveted balance of time and money, and then I'll be good. That will fill the void. That will free me from this sorrow, this deep sorrow. And so on I went I moved from the Bay Area to Atlanta, where I live now. I enrolled in the business school at Emory University. I started a healthcare company. I got a business degree. I had a baby, and literally, Matthew, just checking the boxes, all the boxes toward happiness and fulfillment. I had enough. We had the Mercedes-Benz in the garage and the friends and parties and clothes. I had everything that I needed. Even had a family of my own. We were not on the welfare system. I was not a welfare mom. I was not a teenage mother. All of those things that I had fought desperately against. And still here I was unfulfilled. And I knew the second time around, when I make the career change and I have the baby and I've got all the stuff, that if I went to that dark night of the soul again, I wouldn't make it. I knew it. I just knew in my bones I wouldn't make it this time. And I had a 2-year-old child, and I believed he was the only tether, keeping me on the planet. And I would literally weep and dream about laying myself along the train tracks. And so I, one I guess fateful night, I cried myself to sleep as usual, and I wished to go home, not knowing where or what home was, but knowing that it wasn't here, right now. And my next awareness is me feeling myself leave out of myself. And the way that it appeared to me was like I was in this fantastical dream state where I was flying, high above a city full of lights. And I remember feeling so free in saying, wow, this is what people talk about when they say they're flying in their dreams.
Mhm.
And what I noticed about this situation was it was unlike any dream I'd ever had. For one, I didn't have physical arms and legs, but I felt the sensation of flying, of soaring, truly. And I was acutely aware. I was conscious. I could see without my eyes. I could hear without my physical ears. I could sense without my physical body. So I was fully almost hyper aware. And as I'm soaring over this big city full of lights, I hear a voice say, "Don't look down." And so what I do immediately is I look down only to see that city full of lights crumble to ash.
Mm.
And I realized in that moment that I wasn't on earth any longer, that I wasn't in a body, that I was existing as consciousness.
Mm.
And in that moment, I became afraid. And then I found myself return to my body, lying in my bed, just sweating bullets.
Mm.
And looking up at the ceiling, saying, if I ever have the chance to fly again, I will not be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And that really launched the beginning of my conscious awakening.
It's beautiful. Thank you. It's hard to even know where to go with. It's such a powerful story. So just to feed it back so far, coming into this world, into poverty, into challenging situations, then you thought one of the best things you could do is go be a heart surgeon. And even when you got there, you weren't fulfilled. And then you go to get your MBA, and even that wasn't quite it. And there's part of you, it just sounds like you were missing something. And then it sounds like an out-of-body experience. Not even with your etheric or astral body, you're just doing what we would call soul travel, right? You're just consciousness out of a body. But it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the big awakening, maybe the first milestone in becoming more conscious, to realize I am not a body. And would you say that was the pivotal moment of change for you?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I think prior to that, when I said I acknowledged or heard myself speak, I think I always knew that I had a soul, and I believe everything had a soul, but I didn't know how to communicate with it, or if it was communicating with me. I thought there was a huge separation between all the thoughts in my head, the feelings in my body, and my physical self. I didn't connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought everybody has this voice in their head. Everybody has these feelings. But I didn't connect it to consciousness or awareness or a pathway to getting there. I didn't even know what conscious awareness was, nothing. I knew nothing. And it's not something certainly I was taught in medical school. It's hyper focused on the physical. There is no mention or any credence given to the soul. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I mean, the only, I would say, related thing that I knew was happening was when I would see cancer patients, particularly children, say things like they're leaving now, or they're going to leave, or having awareness that they're going to transition. There's also anecdotal medical literature written on cardiac patients having out-of-body experiences, or patients who are coding in the emergency department or the ICU, saying, "Oh yeah, I could see myself above my body, or I could hear all the nurses," or something like that. And so to me, it's just related to near-death experiences. For me, I mean, I was sad, but physically I wasn't unhealthy. I wasn't having a near-death experience. I was just laying in my bed crying, and so that was the only thing that I thought it could be, was me trying to die, that I was having this experience because this is what happens just before you die. And I just had my own experience of it. And so when I came into myself, I was finally at peace and okay, I'm ready to go now. This is it.
And obviously it wasn't it, because we're still
here.
Yeah,
because
you're
10
using
years later
to do so, right? Why do you feel that consciousness, or knowing that you're spirit, why was that so important? Because people have flying dreams, but you don't see them saying, yeah, I'm not going to be a surgeon, I'm not going to like I'm going to change my entire life. Why do you feel that
Mhm.
a spiritual awakening is so important for you? I think, for anybody who has it, but why is that so important?
For me, I think I now know that I was born onto this planet for a purpose, for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that spiritual awakening gave me a glimpse of what that could possibly be.
Mm.
And so for me, there was an activation that occurred. It wasn't just like a fun experience and then I went back to my normal life. I physically, emotionally, spiritually changed.
Mm.
I began to I could see energy, auras, I could feel chi emanating from my palms.
Mm.
I um I felt like I could receive downloads like symbols and things in my sight. I was vibrating. I could literally feel my energy moving.
Mm.
I could feel myself leave, and I would have these amazing like experiences out of body. Not, I mean, the flying was just the beginning, but I would have like what I would call now lessons, like true full on experiences that to me on earth would seem to take the expanse of an entire day
Mm.
of doing and experiencing different things. And I knew that there was more for me to do. It was in this realm, and so I began learning about my soul. Like, who am I? Getting my Akashic records read. Looking for resources to help me understand me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I knew that there was something more or bigger for me than just to have a fantastical experience. I was fundamentally changed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Some would argue, or some have told me that it was a activation of their Merkaba. Um, I've heard, just different people call it a crisis awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but from that experience, my entire life changed.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think it was just more for me for reasons that maybe you and I won't fully understand today.
Yeah, there's all those different models that explain awakening, yet there's still just going to be models either way. There is so much value in what happened, all those spiritual awakenings. What has the spiritual experiences? So I hear the intuitive, energetic abilities, all that is unfolding. So what has that led to? What does your career look like now after all of that?
Well, I I like to speak about money and consciousness because I believe it was fear surrounding money that kept me from my spiritual work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, fear surrounding money. When I began living out of my body, I was a healthcare entrepreneur creating a healthcare company.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still on the hamster wheel, believing that I had to work very hard to support myself.
Mm-hmm.
And this, comes from that foundational self of believing I was unsupported, believing that I didn't have enough, there weren't
Mm-hmm.
enough resources for me. And so I was just grinding it out as usual, raising a healthcare company. I divested my healthcare company in the spring of 2014 and ended up being recruited by an investment firm in downtown Atlanta. And I worked in healthcare equities for a couple of years, still stressing out on the hamster wheel. Because I had begun to change so much from my awakening, I had separated from my son's father. I knew that relationship was finished. I got my healing attunements. I started to know that I had to do something with this that was happening, but still afraid of how it could support me. So here I am, like literally, like energetically on fire, working at a desk job to earn money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say that if we do not take heed of the messages from our universe, of our own soul, then the universe will show us something that will like almost push us on our path.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it looked like being fired from my investing job. And I remember it was September of 2016. There was the company did this round of layoffs, and never had I thought I would be laid off, you know. And here I was getting a pink slip and a severance package. And so I was very grateful to have that. And my first instinct, again, was fear around money, because now I was a single mom and I was like, I got to keep it together. I've got to be able to provide for myself and my kid. And my second higher frequency thought was, I'm not going to be afraid this time. I'm going to do what it is that I am to do. Like, why am I on this planet, and why is there energy coming out of my palms? And so I began writing in 2016, and that was my first book, The Duality of Being. I knew that I was going to write this book years before I even like titled it and put it on. I think there's this Amazon platform. I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book one day, but I never felt that I had the time to do it. I was just so overwhelmed on the hamster wheel. Like, I was literally in a state of overwhelm. And so I took a trip to one of my favorite places on the planet. I went to the south of France and booked a hotel right along the Promenade d'Anglais, and looked over the Mediterranean Sea and began writing my first book. And from there, I wrote a children's book. I started actually using my healing gifts. Started developing an energy practice in 2017. And so, building my speaking, I knew that I wanted to be able to speak without fear. So I would join Toastmasters. I just began building what I'm doing now, which is my conscious works, which is broadcasting, podcasting, speaking, writing, publishing. And I work with one-on-one clients, people similar to me, very high level functioning people who are now put into their purpose, or who feel unfulfilled and then are propelled into their purpose.
Yeah, beautiful. So, yeah, south of France and writing the books and starting to, at some point, working with private clients. So what is that like now? What's a private session? I've studied with medical intuitives and other psychics over the years to develop my skills, and of course, background in Chinese medicine and hypnotherapy. So, a lot of my life is dedicated to that one-on-one work. And I'm curious, what's it like when someone has a session now with Dr. Susan Nicholas? What's happening?
Well, I work with adults, children, and animals. And so people will, I've had clients who contact me with their child that has a childhood tumor, and I'll work for healing energy with that. I've had clients call me with lame horses or other animals that are ill, and I'll work with them. I work with grown-up people just like me and you, who have something going on within them, or things that are unresolved, particularly from their childhood and even into the ancestral planes. And if they are open to receiving healing energy, then I work with them, but they must be open to receiving it. And so clients that work with me come from all walks of life, and they are what I call on a spiritual journey, even if it's not spiritual work, but they're looking to do their inner work, what I call this process of introspection, to mature their soul. Like, they realize that all the chasing and all the things that they've done in the world haven't fulfilled them. And they're looking for deeper connections and deeper work.
Nice. So the work, can you do the energy work remotely, or do you have to be in person?
Well, the pandemic has shown me the power of distance healing. I wasn't a huge advocate of it when I first started moving energy. I did believe that I needed to be with the person, but now since the pandemic, I have clients around the world. I do a healing. I'm in Atlanta, and I have a client in Amsterdam. So it doesn't matter, where the person is. It's truly what matters is their openness to receive. That's really about it. Even when I have cancer patients, one of the first questions I ask is, do you believe that even if it's a 1% chance that you can be healed? And so it's really opening up those potentials from the belief systems. And when people say yes, the transformations can be miraculous.
Do you talk to any, I have so many questions for you, but do you talk to any of your past physician colleagues about the work you're doing now? And have you ever got like any people's thoughts about yeah.
Well, it's interesting because my first thoughts were that I couldn't speak to anybody about it. I literally thought that my physician colleagues, even my partner, my previous partner, we met when I was in medical school. He's an emergency room doctor. I really thought I would be committed, like to an institution for insanity for speaking like this. And so I didn't talk to many people. Now I actually still do healthcare consulting work. I'm not fully in my conscious work 100% of the time because I self-fund it. And let me just say this, I have been self-funding it. I want this to change very soon, but I've been self-funding it with my consulting work. And so when I'm in hospitals now and I'm in a different role, people will ask me what I do now, or how did I, why am I doing this? And this conversation begins, and I actually will, many people will become my clients, because they realize there are limitations to the allopathic medicine that we've received. And there's no amount of education or money or titles that will heal a soulful void. And so we can do healings together. And it's for those people who are open,
Yeah, and I hear that, how important that is to get that openness, even that 1%. That's a Course in Miracles thing, that you just need the slightest bit of willingness, but it does have to be the slightest bit.
Right.
Yes.
You can't force anybody into it.
Right, definitely. So do you have a case history that comes to mind with the medical intuitive energy work that you've done? Something that stands out as like the one greatest case that makes you say it's so worth doing?
Well, I'll have two. One was it was last summer, so maybe a year and a couple of months ago. A mother called me and said her daughter had a bone tumor in her thigh, and she was about to go through this very lengthy surgery with this risk of limb length disparity and skin flaps and all this kind of sequelae to removing this tumor. They thought that she would break her bone, and so it was emergent. It was literally like they report to the doctor on Friday, and they're like, "You come in on Monday." It was very urgent. And so it was on the weekend, and the mother called me and said, "Is there anything that you can do? This is the situation." She sent me the X-ray film. I saw the prognosis was not great. And I asked her, I said, "Is your daughter open to healing?" The mother said, "I am." I said, "But ask the daughter." And the daughter said, yes. So on the next day, Saturday, we did a healing together. And that child was on crutches in pain. Her mother had her lay down on the couch, lay the crutches on the floor. I could see this on video. And we do the healing, and then she literally stands up and walks away and leaves the crutches on the ground. She goes, and I said to her, I said, when I go into a healing, it's a very sacred place. It's a meditative space. I cannot speak during my healings. And when I tap into this space, this realm, the energy is quite powerful. I consider myself a channel for the energy. And so when I channeled this energy to this area, the child felt better, and she got up and walked. And I said, if she can get it film, if she can get an MRI before the surgery, that would be great. And they said they're going to try, but everything was so urgent and compact. They weren't sure if they could get imaging done before the surgery. Well, they couldn't get this imaging done. They take the child to the surgery. They open her up, close her back up, and say, it's mysterious. There's nothing there. And the mother they took a pathology sample, and they said, it's mysterious. It's not there. There's nothing there. And so we were able, and I did a follow-up session for the wound, to heal the skin, because the skin was opened.
Mm.
And so she fully recovered from that. And it was a 30-minute healing session on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And then I had another one, a client, a friend referred me to a client who has a horse farm, and they had a 13-year-old mare who was lame. And the owners were distraught that they'd have to put her down. And they had heard about my healing work and asked me if I would do a healing session with their mare. And so I have worked with horses in the past, not in this type of capacity, but like in hippotherapy with kids that have disabilities. And I know that horses are highly intuitive beings and creatures. And so I just asked her where her star was, and she goes, oh, she has a blaze. And she sent me a picture of her, and the horse could not walk. She was having a dislocation of her hooves from her feet, and they did not know what was going on with this horse and why this was happening. And they had these highly specialized veterinarians. She was getting shots and this and that, and nothing was working. And so I did this healing with her, with the horse, and she healed. And I learned what was going on with the horse, and it really shocked the owners to understand what this was about. And literally, it was, believe it or not, it was a matter of the heart. This horse had bonded with a gelding that was being boarded in this ranch, and then the owners, after 6 months, just stopped boarding the horse and took the gelding away. And this mare had bonded with him. She hadn't bonded with any of the other horses, and she was heartbroken. I believe she loved the gelding in her own way, and then she started to die. And so we healed that, and the owner sent me a picture, like a video, and she said, "You see the one running around in the red coat? That's Faye."
Wow.
And I knew it because when we did the healing, I could see. I would say with my third sight, or my other sight, I could see that she believed she could run again. I could, if that makes any sense. And so I knew it. I knew that she could heal because she wanted to, and she's well now. And so I've had some quite miraculous healings like that, like very physical things that have been transformed through energy. And I've also transformed energetic things with healing that we can talk about it perhaps at another time.
Sure. Yeah. 100 questions again for you each time you speak. I'm like, all right, what direction are we going to go? But one of the things that's really standing out is psychosomatic illness with animals. Right? You're talking about and I'm glad you went to that level, that as you tapped into what's happening for that horse, that was emotional. That wasn't a physical thing. So yeah, if you want to comment on that, but I also, as you're talking, because your background is in medicine, when the history of hypnotism was with Franz Anton Mesmer, he was a physician, but he had magnets, and he believed he rubbed the magnets over people's bodies, they would heal. One day he forgets his magnets, so he just rubs his hands over the people's body, and they're healing. And then he thinks, oh, the power's inside of me, right? This animal magnetism, as they called it. But the history of that was Ben Franklin. There was a medical and scientific delegation that studied Mesmer, and they said, no, he's not healing through any energy whatsoever. He's healing through the power of belief, imagination, and suggestion. That's all. And so hypnotism, pretty much all of the energy that would have been part of our movement was taken out because it was just considered unscientific. I don't know if you're familiar with that whole story, but I wonder what you would say to somebody who says, no, there's no energy transfer. Right? We don't have any proof of that. It's all just the power of mind. But how does that happen at a distance? How does that happen with an animal? So yeah, what are your thoughts of how this works, and can you remove the energy model from it?
I don't believe you can remove the energy model. In fact, I think it's foundational. And I would say those beliefs, those suggestions, that's energy too. So the foundation of all of it, an idea at its very core, is energy. our language. You can see it measured. You can see the wave of it. It's also energy. That's a vibration. Our beliefs, and I think what you said, it's really foundational to the power of our beliefs, how strong they are. Well, look at how much our beliefs run the world. I mean, look what our beliefs, what we've created with them. And it's all, the foundation of it is belief. Even our money, we believe these pressed metals and pieces of paper have value. And what is the value? It's the consensus belief of the value. When the belief erodes, that's when the currency erodes. So it's the foundation of everything in knowable and unknowable existence is energy at its core. And so I believe energy is at the foundation. And I'll go one step further and say, when it comes to transforming energy, it follows the very same law of conservation of all other energy on the planet. It's the very first law of thermodynamics. It says energy is not created nor destroyed, but it changes state. It must be transformed. And that is true of the energy of us. So our life force, our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call that, at its very core is energy. It's energy. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I wonder what your past self would have said to your present self when you were in medical school. If you heard talk about prosperity consciousness, changing your mind to create wealth, to use your mind or energy to help to heal people. What would your past self have said to all of this?
I do think my past self would have been skeptical, but open. I was never a denier of the soul. Like if somebody mentioned beliefs, like I was not dismissive of it. I was like, oh, in fact, this is where my big disconnect with the way that I trained in medicine is that I could tell that there was something emotionally triggering some of these cancers and diseases, but we never addressed it. Like I could see that there was something in that person. I think I always had this intuition and kind of like this clairsentience. I could feel things. I've always been able to do that. I could sense behaviors. I can feel animals and things. I've always had that. I just didn't pay attention to it. I didn't develop it, but I had it. And so I wouldn't have been a denier of it. I would have been curious about it. Whether or not I would have accepted it outright, I can't say. I do think I was one of those people that had to have a crisis awakening, clearly, because that's what happened to me.
Yes,
I wasn't going to come gently.
Right. Yes, you had suffered enough, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of the left brain stuff, like your attempt to get out of your upbringing, the poverty model that you were brought into. You used your intellect to get out of that, and you did. You became a surgeon. At the same time, your soul was lacking, right, in that. Like you weren't using, you could say, the other side of your brain, but obviously it's more than just your brain because you've been out of your body. You're more than a brain. So bringing your whole soul into it. So now I'm curious more about the financial theme. I know that it's a passion for you, money consciousness. So how would somebody work with you, for instance, if they wanted to get out of poverty consciousness or just move towards increased wealth?
Well, I do a lot of work in this area. That was the nature or the title of my TED, Money Consciousness Overcoming Generational Poverty. I've been actually invited to the UK to speak at Oxford Union on this topic. I run a weekly show called the Money Consciousness Show, where I do transformative work and healings around money. I think we don't like to maybe acknowledge it, but there's trauma and drama surrounding money for many people, even if you grew up with more than enough. And so again, it's not just people that have the poverty story. It's people that have religious beliefs surrounding money. They may believe money is dirty. Maybe there are crimes committed around money, or secrets or an unspeakableness around money. All of those issues, guilt, greed surrounding money. If those feelings are held within the energetic matrix, you can still have money issues.
Mhm.
or great fear surrounding money. People believe that it will be taken from them, or they will be swindled, or they have all sorts of stuff around money. I believe that no person that uses money or is born into this third dimensional construct of now is free of it. That they'll have something around surrounding money.
Mhm.
There's some belief that they have around it. And so those beliefs, again, the core of them are energy. And if they're holding you back from anything that you desire, then that can be transformed. And so I work with people that are very high functioning people that have money trauma and drama,
Mhm.
wealthy. Well, I mean, they can have all the wealth in the world.
Mhm.
Some people have an imposter syndrome when it comes to money, or they have sudden wealth syndrome, or they literally have a psychological diagnosis for having money, like how they behave and who they become. And so there's a lot, even like I would say the clinical medical community and the DSM has recognized a wealth syndrome called sudden wealth syndrome.
Mhm.
And so there's lots of stuff around money. I have a 4-week program that I have created to go through just some of the foundational steps around money, about money being energy, our language surrounding money, our beliefs, our feelings, all of kind of like just the foundational, like how to rethink that we are in a relationship with money, how to think through that. Because we all, have a relationship with money if we use money in any way, but it's just an unconscious one for most of us. We don't realize how we speak about it, how we think about it, how we feel about it, how we handle money matters.
Mhm.
It all matters. Just like if I were in a relationship with you or anybody else, if some people have a love-hate relationship with money, or their avoidance about money, and I say, well, what if I'm in a relationship with you and I avoid you?
Mhm.
Or I say I hate you or wish you didn't exist.
Mhm.
But people do that with money, right? And they
Right.
think that that's nothing. And yet they've got money troubles.
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, how do we rein that in and bring to your awareness that the relationship you have with money is a real relationship, and how
Mhm.
you speak, think, behave, what you do with your money matters.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah, and it all goes back to your mind again. It all goes back to beliefs and to thoughts, and that's all
Mm-hmm.
energy. But yeah, just you're saying like it's the mind. It's just people's relationship. But there's all like mental choices, including horses, or maybe not for money, but like any sentient
Mm-hmm.
being is in there creating their own reality with the power of their mind. And
Right.
yeah, I just hear going back to that a lot. Um, Me being in the field of spirituality for almost my whole adult life, for me, money was like I wanted to be a monk, and it just wasn't important. Like only self-realization, only enlightenment was important. And yet, when I realized, all right, I pretty much need to get a career, right, I had to eventually like be willing to embrace money, and I believe I did. Yet, I found a lot of people over the years having this conflict between spirituality and prosperity.
In
It's like if
money.
you're a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual person, you don't want to deal with money. Or if you're a money person, you don't deal with spirituality. You seem to have integrated those. Can you speak to the importance? I mean, to me, the word is like the importance of being self-actualized, not just self-realized. Like, you're a soul now. You've been out of your body. You're
Mm-hmm.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm a spiritual being. Um, but at the same time, you're doing the human thing. And the human thing not only requires money, but it's a lot more pleasant when we have a lot of it. So yeah, I
Right,
would say,
right, right.
yeah, the importance of balancing spirituality and prosperity, or how would you speak to that?
I would say it's highly important. And if I think, in fact, you may not do your spiritual work or not fully do it because of the money.
Mhm.
If you've got some
Mhm.
issues there, believing that it's wrong or immoral or against God or whatever your belief system is to earn
Mhm.
money and do spiritual work.
Mhm.
Now, I've met a lot of spiritual people now that I've been awakened, and some are multi millionaires in this spiritual realm, and some are living hand to mouth.
Mhm.
And I believe it's all about the belief systems.
Mhm.
And so it's, do you believe to me, it's about self-worth. We often don't recognize that there's a correlation between our outward financial net worth and our inner self-worth.
Mhm.
And it really boils down, I believe, Matthew, to the choices that you make in every day of your life.
Mhm.
And so I do, like, in my conscious work and my money show, I do sessions on charging your worth.
Mhm.
Because when you, particularly if you come out of secular work and then you come into conscious work, what we've been used to is somebody else telling us what our worth is.
Mhm.
And when we accept a job or a salary, we on some level agree to it, that this is what my time, or this is what my ideas, or what I bring, that's what it's worth.
Mhm.
And then when we shift to doing the spiritual stuff, it's often us doing it. There, we don't have a boss necessarily. It's us kind of branching out, unless we begin collaborating, but we end up, we're solopreneurs in
Mhm.
the spiritual realm most often. And then you have to decide what you're worth. And
Mhm.
that's where you see the problems. That's where you see the poverty of soul.
Mhm.
And that's where you see people giving away their gifts. Now, let's just say I'm secular and I'm an actor, and you think I'd just play these characters so well on screen, and you're gonna pay me millions and millions of dollars, and my gift is, impersonation, or whatever my gift is, to be an actor or whatever. We have no problem paying for that.
Mhm.
But if my gift is healing your soul, oh, all of a sudden, why would I, oh my gosh. When what we're doing is actually the hardest, like the most foundational, I think the most impactful work on the planet. Why in the world would we not be compensated for it?
Mhm.
Why in the world? And so it all comes down to your belief systems.
Mhm.
And some people, like, literally will balk at charging for their spiritual work, whatever it is. It could be a tarot reader or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And because they don't believe that they're worthy. They literally, I mean, they're not there yet. They're not
Mhm.
there yet. And so once this becomes, I would say, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's recognized as a profession,
Mhm.
just like other types of healers, like doctors or nurses or hypnotherapists or whomever, physical therapists, the psychologists, whatever, counselors. If the spiritual counseling, when it's also perceived as, well, this, of course, I mean, they're addressing the soul of us.
Mhm.
I mean, they're doing transformations in this life and generations past. This is the heavy lifting.
Mhm.
And then perhaps when there's enough of the threshold is great enough, it shifts the belief systems about what is valuable. In the
Mhm.
meantime, I think we have to stand in our worth and
Mhm.
charge our worth.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many graduates that go through our hypnotherapy training, and you hear things like, "Oh, I'm just going to give the sessions away for free at first." It's like, do you not realize how valuable you are? Do you not
Right,
your
right,
worth? Like, why are you giving this away for free? How many doctors graduate medical school and give away free treatments, right? You don't go
right,
to
right.
chiropractic school and say, "I was going to give away free treatments."
Mm.
So it seems like the more spiritual it is, the more people take issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
But we covered that, and yeah, again, I could speak to you for hours, but let me ask one more question. We'll get towards the end of time. You use the word healing, and you have every right to as a medical doctor, right? But a lot of the laws in different states say you cannot use that word healing or healer. You can't claim to be that unless you're, like in Florida law, you have to be a licensed practitioner of the healing arts. What would you say to somebody who's spiritually awakened and they have abilities like you? They're clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, they have
Mm-hmm.
energy moving through them, they know they can heal people, but the law is literally saying you can't call yourself a healer.
Well, that's the law. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the law of the land. So it is.
Uh,
Whether or not I'm a healer or not, I think that would be up to my clients and
mm,
the people that have benefited from my services. I haven't come across that. Maybe I don't know. I just haven't come across that yet,
mm,
perhaps, as being an issue. I do have a medical degree and a medical license, and
mhm.
maybe that
that,
helps
that's
or
that's a big part of it,
excuses me.
yeah. Sure.
But no, I even like the healers who have attuned me. I've been attuned by non-medical people
Mm,
in my healing practice. I don't. I was not made aware that that was an issue. I mean, I do have, you know, I did get certified for Reiki practitioner, and I did the training for it. I don't know if that is why I haven't had the experience of that, but I do have my credentials. But what I do, like the tapping into alternate, you know, dimensions of possibility and energy, I don't know if there's a school for that. You know,
Right.
a degree, maybe I need to create it. Who knows? And so it's you know, it's not been an issue for me, but I think it's just it's a statement of the belief systems of the society where it is now.
Yeah, sure. No, I can see why it's not an issue for you because you have that credential. But we find in the field of hypnotherapy that a lot of us are
Hmm.
like, hey, I am a healer. But yeah, certain laws say, no, you can't use that word. So yeah,
Well, I
I
guess
feel
in
like
the meantime, you got to find another word, I guess.
sure.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, there's just so many people who are like you, just waking up and they want to get
Hmm.
out there, but they don't have the credentials to get out there. And yeah, we've noticed that word can be an issue. But anyway, yeah, I love talking to you about the prosperity consciousness, the intuitive work, the out-of-body experiences. We're on the same page in so many ways. But yeah, just so we don't run this too long, let me ask you if there's a way somebody can contact you if they're interested in private sessions or your courses or whatnot. How do they find out more about you?
Absolutely. You can find me at www.susannicholas.org. I am on many of the social channels. I'm on LinkedIn at Susan Nicholas MD. I'm on Instagram at Conscious Susan. My Clubhouse handle is Susan Nicholas MD, where I run my Money Consciousness show. My podcast is the Be Conscious podcast on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast producers. It's, you know, I've got podcast listeners in 18 countries around the world.
Hmm.
I work in, my books are all available at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. So.
Awesome. Great. You're doing such beautiful work in the planet. So keep it up. I think everybody who comes across you must be wonderfully impressed. I hope you're impressed with yourself now after
Thank
your,
you.
yeah, your whole journey. If you had closing words for anybody, just the message you could put out to the universe, the most important things you might say to anybody, what would that be?
It's always to be conscious.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it. I
And
mean, I think it all begins with awareness, with conscious awareness.
yeah. And then just one more question then. How do we do that? I mean, I'm a teacher of that stuff. So, but from your point of view, yeah, if you said somebody
How do
be
we be
conscious, yeah,
conscious?
how do we be
Yeah.
conscious?
You know, this is what consciousness means to me. And I know there are broader definitions of sentience and consciousness. And I believe it's maybe the final frontier of what we're now learning or beginning to understand. But consciousness to me, on a very just pragmatic level, is the awareness that you are more, infinitely more than a physical body. And that reality is a concept far beyond our physical world.
Mhm.
And so to me, that is what being conscious is. It's asking questions of things you do not understand. And the first and foremost person to ask is of yourself.
Mhm.
That is being conscious.
Nice, beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners got a lot out of that and they know how to reach out to you if they want more. So thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Thank you, Matthew. It's been a great pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.